Most of the soils here are really low in nitrogen and generally poor soils, as are a lot of soils in Appalachia. I do fertilize at least while the trees are young and growing, about 200 to 300 pounds per acre of 27-4-10, which was fertilizer that the local farm store sells as tree farmer fertilizer, has high nitrogen. The trees respond really well to it. I got to the point where I think I over-fertilized, and you will find that there is nobody who can make good recommendations on the fertilizer. You can do soil analysis and get recommendations for other crops, and you can do leaf analysis on the chestnuts, and we've done both. Ultimately, I've made my decisions about fertilizer on how well the trees responded and what our yields are. And I believe I over-fertilized some of my orchards. I got to the point where they were too vegetative and not much nut production. So I have this orchard we're standing in has not been fertilized for 3 years. Some of my orchards at home, other orchards have not been fertilized for 3 years because of the orchard floor vegetation and the fact that the tree roots have completely occupied the soil. There's a really tight nutrient cycle here, so you can fertilize for a few years and not fertilize, and there's still plenty of nutrition left. So without better knowledge, we're going just on kind of how well the trees respond, and I think young trees ought to be growing 2 to 4 feet per year. If they're not growing 2 to 4 feet per year, either you've got bad soil or you're not putting enough fertilizer on. I recommend that every grower do soil tests, and when you fill out the form, it will ask you what crop you are growing. If you tell them chestnuts, you get no advice on how to fertilize. If you tell them you're growing peaches, follow the peach advice, except for one thing: do not add lime. Chestnuts love acidic soils. We have some soils here that have pH 4.5, and the trees do fine. And in fact, at 4.5, the grass doesn't do so well. And so even though the tree might like it a little bit better if the pH were 5, there's nothing wrong with a little bit less than 5. But otherwise, just pretend it's a peach, and that seems to work. Pruning the chestnut trees maybe is not near as intensive as, say, pruning apples, peaches, or grapes. Main thing we do, Chinese chestnuts will put branches right on the ground, so step 1, you want to remove lower branches just so you can drive around and walk around the trees. And as the trees get bigger and start to fill their space, you want to have a little bit of air space between adjacent crowns of the trees. And so it's important to prune branches just to maintain light penetration all the way around the canopy. And also that space between the tree crowns provides an alley where when you apply pesticides, it can get up, blow it up between the trees. So step 1, just prune so you can drive and walk under the trees. 2, maintain some open space around each tree. If a tree doesn't get adequate light, well, you will find if you look at any chestnut tree, the nuts are produced on the most vigorous and most upright shoots that are in full sun. This is different than walnuts, pecans, or apples. So if you got somebody that knows how to prune apple trees, don't let them into your chestnut orchard. The fruiting wood is just the exact opposite. And it becomes obvious whenever the orchard gets crowded, any branches that are in the shade or even partial shade don't produce any chestnuts. And so that's why you need full sun on as much of the crown as you can.